You know, I've been really hard on other genres of music outside of metal throughout these past couple of years, and especially throughout these past couple of months. I've knocked things such as dubstep, I've knocked things such as pop and rock and rap. You know, I've really just kind of gone on a bit of a warpath. I think it's really time for us to take a look at ourselves, and, well, for me especially. So, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate today. Now, I don't want you guys to think that I'm preaching to you guys or anything like that, or trying to change your minds by what I'm about to do. However, if you're watching this and you kind of get that perception, I apologize. All I'm trying to do is inform. So what I'm going to do here today is I'm going to give you 5 common metal misconceptions, and I'm going to hopefully try to enlighten you a little bit more about what metal is all about. So, if anything, this is more of a tutorial video or something to enlighten you. There have been a lot of people that I've run into that have been fearful about they're allowing their children to be exposed to heavy metal, or they themselves getting into heavy metal because of the different real stigmas and the different stereotypes that may accompany it. And these are a couple that I've heard, and I'm here to really dissect them and kind of showcase why these are kind of, well, unfair, why they are stereotypes. So let's start with number 5. Let's get on with this before I start rambling too long. First one that I've heard so many times is that the music is too loud. And you know what? This is one I can actually agree with. Why can I agree with this? Because there are sound wars going on right now in the genre of heavy metal. Basically, with the advent of better production styles, with the advent of, surround sound technology, and the advent of Blu-ray, which is giving even more superior sound, sound is just making leaps and bounds into the direction of being louder and clearer. And this is something that is being represented and seen in the music. The music is certainly getting louder. However, the music everywhere is getting louder. That's my principal argument. That's my principal rebuttal for this. Rap music, of course, you have a lot of swag if you're going to have a system that has a lot of bass on it, if your record has a lot of bass on it. So there's something where the lows are already being showcased. In pop music, you really don't have this problem as far as the traditional pop is concerned, because it's, especially in folk pop also, you don't hear a lot of overly excessive sound in there. It's something that is more in modern pop, in dance pop, and boy and girl group pop, where you're going to hear the sound really get amped up again. And it's the reason why this is is because this is music that's being designed to be played in clubs or in social places where it's going to naturally be loud. Have you ever been to a club? It's difficult to talk to somebody who's 2 inches away from you. You practically have to yell and potentially damage your voice. With heavy metal, with most of it at least, you can definitely talk to somebody. You might have to raise your voice a little bit, but yeah, it's one of those things where the volume knob is definitely the blame here. Why is the volume knob the blame? Because you're not turning it down. You're not adjusting the level to a level that is satisfactory for you. And that's no reason to not get into a genre of music. You should definitely explore it, but explore it at your own auditory risk. And if it's a little bit too much for you, just turn it down a little bit. Then it'll be fine. The number 4 thing that I hear is actually kind of strange, but I do hear this quite a bit. Number 4 is that the musicianship in metal is sloppy. Wow. Sloppy musicianship in heavy metal? Apparently flowing arpeggios, time signature changes that borderline on complex calculus, and things like that are just not really good form for music. It's something that just sounds absolutely destructive and stupid, and apparently sounds as though it makes no coherent sense, when in reality it makes theoretical and musical sense. I think the reason that this happens a good bit is because metal is kind of a break of the mold. Sometimes in modern rock, and of course in rock of the past, you're going to hear a lot of great musicianship that is heavy on the blues and on jazz, that really explore the real diversities of the instruments and really explore all of the different avenues and different techniques that can be used to play it. Now, whenever this happens, these people are deemed geniuses. However, in metal music, that doesn't seem to be translating, except for people who do have respect. Now, the reason I also think this is possible, and this argument actually holds up in some courts of law, is because they are used to something that is exceptionally simple. They are used to something that does not require all of that much of musical knowledge or thought in order to really create. The layers that are being heard in today's modern music are being done and mixed mainly on computers and using a lot of electronic devices. And whenever you listen to rap, you hear a complex rhythm or a complex beat, and sometimes if it can be overly complex, well, it actually breaks down and causes the rhyme and the overall flow of the song to become damaged. In a pop song, if you hear a pop singer have a beat in the background or have an arrangement in the background that seems to do too much, the same thing can occur. It can really denigrate the entire value of the song. Whereas in heavy metal music, sometimes a little bit more technical proficiency, a longer, a stronger solo actually raises the value because you have that virtuosity effect. It's something where it's almost like what's good for one should be good for the other, but it always really isn't. You take a listen to something like the autotheist movements from the Faceless from just this past month, and you understand why those movements are so absolutely fantastic. They're able to blend various elements of the genre into one song, or in this case, a three-part movement, that absolutely blew people away. You kind of compare that to a song such as Mike Posner's Baby Come Home, I believe was the title of it, where he's trying to sample a bunch of different things and trying to develop a complex beat in the middle of that track, and it just seems to really fall flat. Fans were more into his first single, which was Cooler Than Me, which was a very simplistic idea, a very simplistic beat, but it was exceptionally catchy. Once again, it's like saying night is day and day is night, because you're comparing two completely different things, and whenever you do that, you're actually running the risk of sounding hypocritical. Why is one good and the other is bad? Well, also take a listen to the simplicity in some genres of metal that actually embrace the idea of being simplistic. I'm not just going to harp on deathcore here, or metalcore, or new metal. It's something that happens in various genres. There are some bands that are just guilty as charged for being overly simplistic, and you know what happens? It really dulls and dilutes the overall message, and what it also tends to do is leaves you with a lot less exploration. And exploration is one of the things that heavy metal is all about. So how about we get into number 3? Number 3? What the fuck are they saying? From Cookie Monster vocals that sounds like he's, diabetic and out of insulin, to vocals that make Farmer Joe sound like he's having an excellent, excellent time in his barnyard, to moans that sound like they're coming from hell itself, to this and that. Heavy metal definitely is guilty of having some vocals that are definitely difficult to understand the message behind them. Whenever you listen to the older style of metal, the metal from the 70s and 80s, it's a little bit easier because it's a little bit more clear. But with the advent of death metal, with the advent of black metal, with the advent of various other subgenres of metal and genres of metal, well, that became a little bit more difficult. And obviously, I can understand why that can be very troubling for a lot of people. What is troubling to me, however, is the attachments that are immediately garnered upon them because of this. They don't take the time to actually take a look into the message and actually see what's going on. They immediately think everything's all about death and demons, whenever in reality there's a lot of ideas of personal struggle, personal loss, addiction, various different ideas going on in there. For example, the heavy metal band Death, which employs these death metal vocals that so many people seem to frown upon, were actually a very philosophical band. A band where Chuck was basically freeform, really implementing a lot of freeform philosophy about the world around him and what he really felt and what he thought about what was going on with it. So it's not something that's necessarily all going to be related to Satan. Believe me, we're going to talk about that later. Plus, not to mention, this is present in other music also, though not so much. It's more so in the modern scene. Mainly because in rap, you're speaking a little bit too quickly that the message can become diluted in your speed, and in modern pop, it's being diluted by the masking effects that are being used to help make an artist sound better, such as auto-tune or the samples that are in the background. And sometimes the music itself can actually become itself a distraction, where it completely ruins the ability to hear a message. So, yeah, this is something where metal is definitely the genre of music that has the most problems with it, but it's present in other places also. And once again, like I said, once you understand the message that's behind some of it, then it really isn't that great of an argument. Let's get to number 2. It's a cult-like genre, it's a cult-like experience that also encourages alternate lifestyles. Now, by alternate lifestyles, I'm not necessarily sticking with the LGBT. I'm pro-LGBT, for anybody who gives a shit. People believe, and I hear this a lot, people believe that if you're into heavy metal, you belong to a cult. You're immediately going to become a Satanist. You're going to become a pagan. you are going to get into witchcraft. You are going to start worshiping Norse gods. You're going to start worshiping this and that. I'm here to tell you that you can set your minds at ease, because all metal fans do not have a secret metalhead cult meeting that we all have to attend with punch and pie and cookies where we discuss how we're going to fuck the world over. No, it's not how it happens at all. It's the reason why whenever you hear all these doomsday theories, that's got nothing to do with heavy metal. It's got to do with the Mayans and crazy religious people. I'm going to share my own personal experience with you. I was already wavering on my faith prior to becoming a huge, huge, huge underground metal fan. I was already wavering on those ideas because I was naturally explorative. I wanted to know more about everything that was around me. I was one of those inquisitive bastards that just wanted to know everything. And the more that I learned, and the more that I read into things, and the more that I started to understand that my very perception of reality was changing. And whenever that happens, and it's something that is very good for you, that is a moving experience, an almost quote-unquote religious experience, you have to go with it. Just because my religious experience was not with your religion does not mean that I'm in a cult because I listen to heavy metal and I'm not the same religion as you. What happened after I started listening to metal was that I became a little bit more active in the promotion of the genre because I enjoyed the music. That doesn't make me promoting a cult. That makes me promoting music, promoting sound, promoting the arts. Promoting the arts is not the devil's work. Promoting the arts is showcasing that which humans are able to do and accomplish. They're able to accomplish many things, including making beautiful music. Just because our music does not sound beautiful to you doesn't mean that it's not beautiful to us. Not to mention, if you listen deeply into metal, you would hear a lot of beauty. However, ignorance is an ugly thing. And ignorance is something that I see in a lot of people whenever it comes to this genre. That is the reason why I speak so boldly about it, because I'd like to put an end to ignorance. That's the reason why I don't like to attack Christian forms of music unless people push me to it. And even then, it's a very, very irrational argument that I make, because the arguments that are being made to me are irrational. See what I'm saying? It's the reciprocity effect. It's almost like saying, if you speak dumb to me, I'll speak dumb to you, and together we're a twin pair of idiots. And that's pretty much this whole idea. And the idea behind number one. The idea behind number one is the most age-old problem that people have with heavy metal. And it is very simple. They believe that heavy metal is all about Satan, and all about evil, all about demons. Wow. I'm going to stop you before you continue on with the all-abouts. Because music, especially heavy metal, is not all about Satan, it's not all about demons, and it's not all about evil. Consider progressive rock, consider progressive metal, consider bands such as the Neil Morse Experience, consider bands like Dream Theater from the progressive side that are able to incorporate a lot of their personal beliefs just subtly in the songs. Here's the thing, they don't have to beat you in the fucking skull with it every 5 seconds in order for it to be religious. Instead, they opt to do something a little bit different. They like to talk about other things aside from that. They like to talk about personal loss or confusion or the difficulty making a decision. Or they like to, talk about a story, create a story and, really kind of act it out through the music, almost like an old school symphony that you'd hear from Beethoven or another composer of that nature. Sure. Black metal is all about Satan. No, it isn't. It's not all about Satan. Some of it's just about flat out saying fuck the world and hating it. And you know what? Sometimes that's not a bad position to have, because with, people running around that are just doing terrible things, murderers, rapists, it's just, it's hard not to say that. Heavy metal is also not all about Satan, because heavy metal is dealing with the issues of self-awareness. It's dealing with philosophy. It's dealing with a greater sense of understanding. There are some metal bands that will definitely go off kilter and go and dive into other religions, mainly because perhaps that is their religion. Oh man, we're getting back to this idea once again. Just leave people alone about religion and stop it, really. The reason why a lot of this stuff exists is because you're trying to beat people senseless with it. Yeah, I'm actually saying that there might be some sects of heavy metal that would not have occurred, or at least occurred with such violent frequency, if you didn't just back the fuck off sometimes. Yeah. Heavy metal is also not all about Satan, because heavy metal, as you maybe have conjured up previously, or thought previously incorrectly, is all about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Well, that itself isn't true, so it being all about Satan isn't true. Now, who's to say that Satan is not present in other forms of music? Satan is mentioned in Christian music, considering they have to have the antithesis to see and have God be the victor, have Jesus be the victor, so it is present there. It's not praised there. However, what's the difference? Just because something is praised in music and something is touted as an antithesis in music doesn't necessarily mean that that makes it bad. Doesn't necessarily mean that that makes it a problem. That doesn't necessarily mean that you should shield every single person that you know from it. People are allowed to make their own decisions. Sometimes you just have to accept it. I accept the fact that you may never like heavy metal. I do. That's why I'm just presenting these ideas to you. I'm not saying go out and buy heavy metal music now or you're a fucking idiot. I could have easily said that, just as easily as I just did, but I didn't mean it. It was an example. You and I may never see eye to eye, viewer. You and I may never really see face to face on this whole idea. That doesn't mean that I don't respect you. I definitely respect you because if you're watching this video, that means that you at least made the opportune effort in order to learn a little bit more about the genre and understand many of the misnomers about it. While you may not change your mind, that's fine by me. As I just said, I'm not encouraging that. I'm merely making you aware. I will always respect you, and I would hope that you would respect me in the same way. Because if you do not, then what reason do I have to respect you? I just admitted that I respected you. Well, you can see where this is going. It's becoming another intellectual argument. Well, there we go. 5 common misconceptions about heavy metal, and some reasons why they're misconceptions. Hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I hope it opened some eyes, and I hope I will talk to you guys very, very soon. Hit the subscribe button, like and favorite this, share it to your friends. I would love to hear all of your feelings about this video. Thanks. Bye.